All right, joining us now is one of the most iconic voices that you have heard through the decades, and that is Chris Berman. Chris, appreciate you taking the time today. How are you doing? And first question for you is, does it feel like it's been 45 years since you started at ESPN? Is that right? 45 years?
Yeah. I have to slap myself also, Ron. Good to be with you. And yeah, I vaguely remember your dad playing baseball, but you'll have to refresh my memory what he did. But I just saw the name when you called me, and I went, all right, that's fine. You know, whether he's related or not. At any rate, so I was 24 when ESPN began. It was 1979. Not to bore you yet, unless we go into it with questions, but the whole landscape was cable was a what is it? I'm talking about cable, not even ESPN, a 24-hour sports. What are you kidding? But I was 24. So I got hired as the junior member of what was a fledgling Sports Center staff that may have been 7 anchors then, and I did the Late Show. And by the Late Show, I mean I'm in Connecticut when I'm talking to you, Ryan. That was the 2:30 a.m., 11:30 West Coast. And as I point out, right in the middle of the evening in Hawaii and Alaska, so no problem. And I did the Late Show. And for $16,000, I thought in 1979, that was pretty cool. And 45 years later, they're too stupid to get rid of me. So I'm still here. I'm 69. My God, I'll be 70 next May. And you don't go into anything. It's different now. I mean, nobody works at a company, not nobody, 30, 40, 50 years, let alone in broadcasting. But I don't know that I'm going to get to 50. That's not the point of the answer. The answer is 45 years is, you don't think that's going to happen. Well, did you think, hey, we were hoping ESPN would make it.
Yeah.
But in your 20s, you go for it. You follow your dream. I mean, I can't compare to you the baseball, your skills. You have to go at your 20s. You're not going to start at 45 years old. But if it doesn't work out in your 20s, or if that specific opportunity, let alone the business, doesn't work out, give it a go. And who knew? I'm still here. Like I said, like mold in the wall. Like they can't get rid of me.
Can't get rid of you. And for those that are wondering, that you started right when ESPN was founding, right? This was the unknown of what could happen. And the other part of it too is, you're right. In the baseball sense, you brought that up. You know, it's not something in baseball where you can go, hey, I'm going to try this out in 10, 15 years. Sure, you can start a career whenever you want. But if there's something you need to take a little leap of faith in, you gotta jump on it. And now I'm curious, since you were doing the late hours, do you have a memory of one of those first shows? One of those feelings, memories, even though it's the middle of the night, that you're going on there and going into something that you have no direction where it's going to go?
Well, I got a lot of memories because your mind remembers things in the 20s. Don't ask me what I had for breakfast, Ryan, today. So I'm kidding. But I think it was eggs. Well, it's hard to even imagine. I mean, we had 70 or 80 employees those first few months, you know, in fall of 79. And actually, it was an Orioles. Oh, it was Orioles Pittsburgh. Oops, that World Series that year, which was a hell of a series. I mean,
right.
It didn't turn out for your locals the way it should, but it was a hell of a series. And that was right away. I started on October 1st. So, hello, that was World Series was the first month, and you know the football would come later. Yeah, so the first couple of months we didn't even have the whole studio. Excuse me, the control room and the technology built in yet. So we had what's a TV truck, just like you'd see at all the ball games. The outside with these huge cables going out the back door, which was like a huge garage door, and these, you know, these 6-inch cables and whatever. And you had to leave the door ajar, and there's enough of a room. Well, it's fall, it's New England. Nobody saw it. A skunk got into the studio, or not running around. Well, who knows? You know, it wasn't like on 24 hours a day, so the lights were probably off. Obviously, they wouldn't have, he or she wouldn't have tried it. Got in. Apparently wasn't that much of a fan of our broadcasts and do what skunks do and they let fly. Okay.
Yep.
You've had one in your garage and anybody that has knows you don't just open the door, let the wind come in and the smell leaves in a day. No. It's like 2 weeks. And so we did broadcasts almost choking with the skunk smell, trying to say Baltimore 5, Kansas City 3, I mean, to make it up. And, well, that's one memory. I mean, I could give funnier, well, not funnier. That's pretty funny in itself. We were Wild Wild West. That's what we were.
I think that's the things that I love. Here's this massive company now, and everyone looks at ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports, but they're using a little TV truck and a little Mr. Skunk is coming through. I had a skunk experience in a different way, Chris. It was actually, we confused my mother confused a skunk with an electrical fire, which we had an issue with electrical fire at the time at our house growing up. And I guess a skunk got into the HVAC unit in the house there. Needless to say, things were smelling for a long time. That was a hard thing to get rid of, but let alone you guys going through that at ESPN, that makes the journey even better for you. I think so. But
it does. You appreciate every step you've made, to your point.
Yeah. Well, then, okay, things get better. Obviously, we get rid of the skunk. We keep moving on. And I think where then your name started to even ascend was when the NFL countdown began. And correct me if I'm wrong, that was in 1985, was right around that time where things changed. And Chris, I still don't understand how you had and it's going to be a double layered question for it, but you helped change how highlights are watched, perceived. Do you remember having a conversation when this was starting up back then in 1985 on what kind of the goal was to bring those type of highlights to the everyday listener?
Absolutely. Well, so it was 1987. Pete Rozelle was still the commissioner. I know that sounds like ancient history, but it's not to me. He was a great guy, one of the smartest people I ever met. He was commissioner through the 80s, 60s, 70s, 80s. You don't think he saw a few things. And he and ESPN, he saw not so much, okay, I'm predicting cable TV will be a hit, which from 1979 to 1987 was if you're drawing one of those graphs, right, that we have in class or whatever, or you know, a big company doing an economic chart. That was cable in addition to ESPN, okay? So we were 79. I'm going to digress 1 second. We were 79. CNN was 1980. It wasn't, they have this political. No, they were the only news 24 hour. And then MTV, when it was MTV, you may not even remember when it was real MTV, when it was videos in the 80s, 90s. So those three, I got music, I got news, I got sports. I got to have it if I'm traveling, you know, or living where I am. And I'm paying the $20 or $30 a month. Don't we wish that was the cable bill now, right? Or the streaming or whatever. So it's going like this. The NFL, Pete Rozelle and ESPN made a deal to show the last 8 Sundays of the year, heaven forbid, on cable TV, if Baltimore, well, the Ravens were, let's just say they weren't there and the Colts were gone, but that's not the point. The point is, if Washington was playing New York and Washington would also be able to have it on regular channel, but the rest of the country, you had to get it. That was a big gamble at the time. Not for us, because for ESPN, Ryan, that meant, my God, the NFL, the crown jewel. I mean, the baseball was much closer in the 80s, but you know what I'm saying. They believe in us. We've made it like that. In these 8 years, we've made it. And so now what they came up with was the Sunday night game last 8 weeks, not to start till after the World Series, to show the hold that baseball had. I'm not saying it doesn't, but you know what I mean. That's a long time ago. But we also would put in a morning show, which Brent Musburger, great, CBS and the others had 30 minutes. We did an hour. And then we did an hour and a half, 8 years. And then we did 2 hours, then 3. NFL Primetime was devised by not yet our president, but still a dear friend of mine. He became our president for a long time, Steve Bornstein. He and Pete Rozelle devised this show for an hour on Sunday night at 7:15 Eastern to run to 8:15. You can run as many highlights as you want. Now, you're going to have a commercial, maybe here and there. You're going to pop on camera to go blah, 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 but not a lot of blah, blah, blah. If it was a 60-minute show, we tried to show over 30 minutes of highlights, and that way over. And we were allowed to run, if the game was 47-45, show me a 6-minute highlight, go ahead. And at that time, I'm giving you a long answer, but a lot of and you don't even remember it. There were only 3 games a day you could see on Sunday TV, wherever you lived. You had your local, and you had the doubleheader game, and maybe some oddball. You didn't see Seattle at Arizona, no, which turned out to be 47-45. And therefore, 6 minutes at 8 o'clock at night were, holy crow, look at that. And so I do know in not so many words that Steve told Pete Rozelle, I have this idea for a show. What do you think? And he liked it. We're going to throw the ball. And I got the guy to throw it, which was me. I wasn't part of that. I mean, I was just a kid, right? 33. So 32. So Primetime became not because I did it with Tom Jackson, we talk every week still. We're dear friends. And we'll be till we're gone. It was, you had to watch it. If you're a football fan, not because you like Chris Berman or Tom Jackson, you had to see it. You weren't seeing it anywhere else. And now you knew the whole league in an hour. It was a nice full meal, but a 1-hour meal, not 6 hours and then a night game. And then the ratings in that, well, to finish, it's a long answer, but that'll be along with the game that I think the guy's related to you. And those would be the 2 things on my professional tombstone that go to the top right below my name. Like he did NFL Primetime. Everybody in football had to watch it. And he also did this game in Baltimore on September 6, 1995. Those are the 2 things that strip everything else bare that I'm most proud of to this day.
Yeah, and we'll have to jog that memory here in a little bit about what happened on that day in September. It's still a little fuzzy for me. The lights were on, but no one was home. Back then, I was 2 years old. But to finish out this conversation, and I'm glad you gave that answer because it is fascinating of where we've come. Looking at that, at a click of a button, people can now watch whatever game they want around the country, whoever your favorite team is. Back then, it was limited, but you wanted the exposure and you needed someone to conduct it. And you were the perfect guy with it. And then the duo of you and Tom was something that everyone wanted to tune into constantly. And then how the heck did you come up with all of your sayings and your little quirks and isms? I'm trying to think back to it, Chris. I mean, we could go through all of them. There's obviously clock's running, tick, tick, tick. You can have the rumbling, stumbling. Obviously, not even going to try to do a whoop, but you came up with all that. Where was your inspiration for that? I can look at some of the newer broadcasters that can go back and go, well, man, I used to watch Chris Berman, and that's where I got it from. Who was your inspiration then as you were going into this type of field?
Well, there are a lot of names that may not ring that familiar with you. Not to put up first, but when we were younger, Howard Cosell did not the fastest 3 minutes. That's kind of where it gave birth to what I've done.
Right.
But he did halftime highlights showing maybe 5 or 6 games, but You didn't see anything of those. So that was one of the inspirations for the highlights. He didn't say whoop, he didn't, but let him go. I mean, or instead of he could go all the way. I mean, so part of it is that there was a guy that actually, if you have older, he got his start, or at least in Washington. Maybe it wasn't his start, but a guy named Warner Wolf, who then went to New York, and then that name won't mean much to you, but as a highlight deliverer, he was unreal. He would do the local sports in Washington and then New York, but he would grab a highlight of some catch made by the Royals. I don't know how he got it. And it was upbeat, but it wasn't, it was describing what you're seeing, but doing it live. Like, if he makes the catch, don't say, and this ball's going to the wall and he's going to make the grab again. No, let me see it first and go, oh, what a catch. So how I adopted the sound effects, and that was just what you're seeing, Ryan. Like yesterday, Saquon Barkley went backwards with a hurdle, and if that's, that's a whoop. But actually, each one of those has its. Maybe it's scary to say that I'm not that much different off the air than I am. Maybe I'm no different off the air than I am on the air. So
I don't think you are. I don't think you are at all. But hey, that Saquon play, by the way, I mean, that'd be a whoop right there? Or is there something else that you haven't seen before? I haven't seen someone jump over someone's head backwards. Have you seen that in all your years?
No, not at all. That was amazing. Now the whoop, just to continue with that. Yeah. That really was an inspiration from Barry Sanders.
Yep.
I mean, that guy had ankles that went 180. I mean, he biologically was different than any other human being. And he could spin 180 without moving his shoes. Of course, I'm kidding, but you know what I mean. So that was a whoop, whoop. I mean, that was a continual. However, if you really want to investigate where the whoop came from, the Three Stooges, it's Curly.
So that's where you got your little inspiration from there.
Well, it wasn't trying to be one of the Three Stooges, but it fit,
Yeah. Well, I think that's the fun part of this, right? You make the highlights fun. You make it enjoyable. And then you come up with these nicknames along the way for players that is that just come up on the spot, or you're sitting there and all of a sudden it just comes to your mind? Are you able to come up with nicknames on the fly like that? Or do you have to sit there and actually look at, okay, I think the recent one I was seeing about with, with Minshew, like Minshew, right. or ABCD, Lamb, whatever it may be. How quick is that for you to come up with that? Because that's just another art in itself.
Well, if I slept with the rosters, that's how rumors start. Okay. So I don't. It mostly began really with baseball in the 80s.
Yeah.
But the football part, I'll just move it forward. When you have highlights and you're not looking into the camera, they don't work. They don't work if you're trying to be. Hey, I can be noticed if I do this. Mm-hmm. It was an organic start. Honest. It was never, this is going to work. I'm going to be famous. By the way, it rarely works if you do it that way. If you're you go with it, and it's sports, all right? It's highlights. So it began really in the 80s with baseball, where not a lot of games were on, except maybe 3 nights a week. So a lot of times back in the 80s, Baltimore 5, Seattle 3. And here's the score on TV for 40 seconds. Well, and then you put, Seattle, let's see, that was Julio Cruz. So if you're just trying to make it entertaining while you're staring at a line score, Julio, won't you let me take you on a sea cruise at a 3-run double, and they beat the Orioles, whatever, right? And so that was baseball.
Right.
Now with football, what it allows me to do is a lot of it I sing okay. Not that you're tuning in to hear me sing. I'm not.
I'm good.
This is not Taylor Swift. We're not selling out 70,000 seats, okay? So, but if it's video and let's say, and this is just what's popping in my head, it's not current actually, but I heard the song on the radio the other day and I laughed because Steve Bono was a pretty good quarterback and a friend of mine to this day. And so Sonny and Cher, Sonny Bono, sang I Got You, Babe. So when he would go, I mean, a long time ago, I was young, he'd go back to pass, but he's looking around. So I would go do, 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 and then he'd throw it. And if it was complete, I got you, babe. And it works. And if it doesn't, we're on to the next thing. It's not a 3-minute stand-up comedy. It's a lot of the nicknames do come within 5 or 10 seconds. And then, you know, not all of them are Rembrandt paintings, Ryan. Some of them are finger paintings as they turn out. But it really started with baseball and migrated to football and both. They're probably over 1,000. I mean, if there's ever a list, which I never wrote down. The best one.
Yes.
Is Burt B. Home Blyleven. Okay. Okay. Hall of Fame pitcher.
Mm-hmm.
But the beauty of that nickname, not that I was so smart to think, oh, here's why it's good. I just thought of it. Is you don't have to know that A, he's a pitcher, B, he has or had one of the best curveballs in the history of the game, C, oh, he plays for Minnesota or Pittsburgh or, you know, fill in the blank. No, every kid heard it and every parent said it. Be home by 11. You don't have to understand that he's a pitcher. It works. And the other one, which I actually saw on a banner at Old Memorial Stadium in Baltimore, when those Orioles, 79, John Lowenstein was one of the outfielders, and I didn't steal it. If it's funny, I use it. People would send me lists of 50, and I'd laugh at 6 or 7 of them, and I used them. No, it's not about, oh, I have a trade. I have none. But that was John Tonight, Let It Be Lowenstein, which was a beer, Lowenbrow, very popular at the time. And so, I mean, for Baltimore nicknames, yeah, well, that's the best Oriole nickname that I have, and even to this day. And I don't really do baseball anymore. I love it, not because I don't like it, but I'm semi-retired. I do my football. But those would be among the top ones. But it really was organic. Anyone that says, oh, he was trying, no, I'm not smart enough to be an actor. And if you're an actor on TV or on your podcast, it'll never work.
Yeah, well, hey, believe me, nothing ever seems forced with it. It just rolls off the tongue, and I'm sitting there, and Brad and I can do a show, and I'm like, I don't know how to be that quick-witted with these comments to let it fly. And you're saying, yeah, there might be some finger painting going on, but honestly, I'm feeling like there's a lot of Mona Lisas, because all the ones that remember that stick are all these phrases that you use over and over and over again. And I love the fact, though, Chris, we'll move on. I just love the fact that you were willing to put yourself out there with it, create a style that was entertaining. Because what I'm trying to do in this industry, and I think that's with everyone, you're showing highlights, you're trying to bring an audience in, but truly you want them to enjoy the experience. And that's where you and many other of the greats transcended the space here. And it's really cool to hear your mindset work through all the years of it. And I know you're not a baseball guy. You say you don't do baseball, but you are a baseball guy. For everyone that doesn't know, Chris, you were a part of some pretty cool moments. Again, now talk about trying to remember or to recollect your memory. My memory wasn't there back in 1995 in September on a day where a record that no one thought would be broken. You were the one that was able to be there to call the game. And I think to this day, you would say that that was the most significant moment that you got to be a part of.
Absolutely. Because, you know, in the Sports Center, you're doing baseball every night. In the 90s and the 2000s, I did, which is not a lot if you're a local broadcaster, Ryan. I did probably 400 games. That's not nothing. You know, doesn't make me great at it. Don't get me wrong, including postseason games. So I did plenty. I was baseball. and I loved it as much, to be honest with you, as a fan. So that night, I was the Wednesday night announcer. It wasn't Chris Berman using his muscle. This is going to be big. Well, baseball started a little late that year because remember the strike in
Right.
94,
Mhm.
it wasn't ready to go on April 3rd or whatever opening day was. So the schedule they came out with, they still were bargaining. The schedule got reshuffled. And by the way, Baltimore could have had a rain out any of the 5 months, but the reshuffled schedule had Baltimore against California, the Angels, on a Wednesday night in Baltimore. That's when 2-1-3-1 was going to happen. It might have happened on the road had they started on time. That's the first curveball, Burt Blyleven curveball, if you will.
Yep.
Second, John Miller, rightly so, was our main Sunday announcer. He did the games with Joe Morgan. What a great pair. Well, John was the Orioles announcer, and there's no way the Orioles or John would have said, look, I'm the ESPN guy. I can't do the local broadcast on that night for 2-1-3-1, or for that matter, 2-1-3-0 the night before, which was also very cool, overlooked in the big picture. So I was the Wednesday guy with Buck Martinez. It just fell to me. About 10 days before, I said to our number 2 guy, I don't know what I mean by this, but I think this is a semi-announcerless game. He goes, what do you mean? I said, I don't really know what I mean. I don't know what we're going to expect. I have no idea. But I have a feeling sights, sounds, we'll see. And then, of course, the game happened. By the way, you probably haven't heard this, and your dad will have an interesting, when you ask him about it, because I saw his comments the night before when they had the number up on the wall in right field, of course, 2-1-2-9 the night before on Tuesday night. And when that game became official after 5 innings, or if the Angels were behind, I don't remember, 4.5 innings, the team behind bat, the bats 5 times. When 2-1-3-0, a number that I, as a young boy, knew what 2-1-3-0 was, just like 7-14, Babe Ruth, home runs. I got it. 2-1-3-0, Lou Gehrig. I got it. I know what that means. There was a different mood in the state. It was, whoa. 2-1-2-9, and they put down 2-1-3-0. Even your dad, I think, will tell you, like, oh, my God. So that was the more, oh, my God. Now, the big night, September 6th, speaks for itself. And it was a night bigger than baseball, bigger than Cal, bigger than Lou, bigger than baseball. I look at it as a night for America. Here we are as we speak the night before an election, which has nothing to do with it. But it was a night for America. I'm packing a lunch. I understand baseball players even then got paid better than most. Now, it's a whole nother story, but that's not good. That's great. Pack a lunch, you go to work for 14 plus years and never call in sick. Well, okay. That's a work ethic in America and really the world. But let's just keep it to America. I thought it was a night for America, like it was. And baseball had the strike, and a lot of people had, understandably so, bad feelings. There was a lot going on. Joe DiMaggio was in the building. Hello, Joe DiMaggio, representing his teammate of a year and a half, Lou Gehrig. He spoke after. If my teammate Lou Gehrig were looking tonight, he would, President Clinton, Vice President Gore, I met them both, and President Clinton came in the booth a half inning early in the middle of like an at bat. And I see a guy sit down. He's doing, I don't remember now, top of the 4th. I think he came the bottom of the 3rd. And I see this hand while I'm on the 2-1 pitch. It's outside for a ball or whatever I was saying. And he goes, hi, Chris. well, hi, Mr. President, how are you? And he was an inning with us. Earl Weaver was on with us. Brooks, God rest his soul, both of them. But Brooks, I got to know really well. I'm sure you did too.
Yep.
It was never a superstar, more understated and kinder than him. That's what they were than him. Harmon Killebrew, Al Kaline, that I could go on and on and on. Those guys were, and Brooks did an inning. You get the picture. It was, and so we haven't even gotten to your dad. Two things I want to throw out to you. One, you may not know, but also you got to ask him. 2130 when that showed up. Ooh. And he agreed that it'd be okay if I interviewed him for 3 minutes when he came in the clubhouse door at 4:30 or 4 o'clock or whatever it was. So he knew it. It wasn't it. But I'd be the only one he would talk to because it was for the broadcast, like 3 or 4 questions. And he came in, and we're right in the front before you go left or right to the clubhouse, the showers, the whatever. And the second question first one was, innocuous and how you feeling, or whatever. The second question was, I looked him right in the eye and I went, Cal, you think you might get in tonight? And he typical your dad. Very not like, well, what do you mean? It was like, he starts laughing. He goes, well, I haven't seen the lineup posted yet, so I hope so. And he years later thanked me for being the only person that made him chuckle in that whole thing. Not that I'm anything great, but he and I will have that between us. Now the lap around the stadium, we all had tears in our eyes of happiness. And we couldn't have spoken, Buck and I. But in the end, as announcers now let me take it away, just to our part. We said nothing for 23 minutes and let this be a lesson. It wasn't planned, although I was right, an announcerless game. We won an Emmy. Now, you win an Emmy when we're broadcasters, we speak. We won an Emmy for saying nothing. So there's a message in there, Ryan, a real big message. And my God, I got tears in my eyes thinking about that night and what it meant, and your dad and I are friends we were friends already, but I was honored to be there. Okay. Yeah. Honored.
Yeah. Chris, first off, hard to make my dad laugh at times there. Mr. Guy can be very serious. And those moments leading up to when I refresh his memory, he was ready for, he wanted to get through it. And then it's after it happens and you sit there and you go like, wow, how did I get here? In that type of sense and looking around and what the impact was. But you need the humor. You need to be able to relax. And I still remember that was the one thing of nothing needed to be said for a moment to really show the beauty of it. And it made me think about this. You can go through all this and maybe you have this answer, Chris, maybe you don't. Calling an iconic moment or not calling an iconic moment is a skill. We can go through, I go back to if we're going iconic moments, Al Michaels, Do You Believe in Miracles is one of those moments that sits in time. You letting the moment happen with Buck is one of those things that people remember in that moment in time. I know you can never fully prepare for it, but what goes into that, you think, to really have it create that type of special feeling that people continue to talk about till this day?
Well, it wasn't to purposely not speak. That was not, I said whatever I said about the unreachable star.
Yeah.
I kind of only thought that up that afternoon. It's the Man of La Mancha, Don Quixote, the famous, my God, one of the most beautiful Broadway songs, of which there are millions. To reach the unreaching is reach the unreachable star. Okay, then you're going to lay out because the crowd was, but what happened? Your dad didn't know I'm going to take 20 minutes and shake everyone's hand.
No, he didn't.
No, of course he didn't. So again, the beauty of our business is, well, it's like a baseball game. Oh, it's a grounder to short. Oh, I was expecting him to hit a fly ball. I better be ready in case I got to go to my, I mean, it's live. You have to react to whatever it is. And you prepare because I was quite nervous at the biggest rating we ever, baseball. I mean, those numbers from the 90s are so much higher than anything now because it's it's 8 million channels. So, I mean,
Right.
you can't even compare it. But you knew that everyone would be watching. And so, the ESPN, you had big moments, but I never did a Super Bowl. I mean, like I did pregame, postgame and stuff. But so this was a big deal. You know that going in. You just try to think yourself, don't boot the ball at short, all right? Just use two hands, whatever your skills are, and just make a nice throw to first. You're not trying to show off like, look at my arm. Okay. I mean, I'm just trying to relate it to Cal's position. And
Make the play.
right.
Make the play, keep the game going.
Yeah, get the out, and what's next? So it just was, and in that ballpark, which is still 30 years later, it's so, because it was the first of the new, still looks new. I haven't been in there in a while, but it's still, I give it, it was just, it was a great idea, and it was carried out 100%. So it's in this new park. Baseball was renewed. Lou Gehrig, 14 years of playing shortstop. If it didn't give you goosebumps, which it still does to this day, whether you're announcing in the park or watching, or young reading about it now, there's something wrong with you. Yeah. If you love baseball and you love sport, there's something wrong with you.
Yeah, well, I think that's the moment right there. Is a day and age. You mentioned that there's so many different channels and streaming services and everything nowadays that it felt like it was almost more unified back then because that was the moment that people tuned in for as a nation. Everyone tuned in for. And look, we love how the advances have changed a lot. Some for the better, maybe some for the worse, depending on how people view it. But for that night, and that's one thing. I love the memories. I appreciate you mentioning it to me because everyone goes, Ryan, great night. Wow, it was incredible. I go, hate to tell you guys, lights were on. No one was home. I was 2 years old. I was adorable looking, by the way. I had blonde hair back then, Chris, and I had more hair at the time. Now the Ripken gene is really kicking in, as you mentioned to me before we got on air. Man, the resemblance is there. Well, the resemblance in the hairline is very close too. So, but I love hearing the stories because the memories are what live on. And I go back and watch, and I try to pick up something new. But having someone that had a front stage opportunity to see the game from a different angle and one of the most unique perspectives that you can have, I think that was great. A couple fun things here, Chris. Get you out of here.
Hold on, Ryan.
Yeah,
hold on one
go
second.
ahead. What you got?
I'll give you one other humorous story for the night.
Oh, please.
It needs to be told.
Please. This is what we need.
No, it needs to be told. So this is 2 hours before the first pitch, or 90 minutes, right? We're in the booth, Buck and I. And I look up to left, on the top of left field, because we know the president's coming. He may not there yet, but he's coming. He's going to do an inning with us, but he's coming. I mean, it's a car ride, right? And I have a feeling that his wait on the Beltway wasn't as long as most, okay?
Yep.
So I said, Buck, look up there on the top of left field by the lights or whatever. See that guy up there on the scaffolding? By the way, with a rifle or whatever. I said, he's got me. Now I want you to look at right field. Not right at the number, but wherever it was up there. See those two guys up there, or the one guy up there? He's got you. So my point is, Buck, when the president comes in and you or I drop a pen on the floor, or, whatever, you're shuffling a paper, don't make a quick move for it. We'll be in trouble. That's true. That's a true story. Buck would tell you that I told him that.
Wow. Well, man, also, I still love the fact that you're calling the game and all of a sudden, oh, Mr. President, good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Hey, by the way, no sudden movements.
Yeah, and he also asked for a nickname at the end, and I went, I got to run that through your cabinet before I try one. I didn't have. I'm not going to nickname the president on the spot. I'm not.
Oh, that would have been that would have been tremendous. But yes, that's a good call by you.
Yeah.
I was playing it safe. So you never, well, I guess because like the Ripkens, like I guess, Calvin already had a nickname, Iron Man and stuff like that. There was no other nickname really to be given for guys.
Nope.
No.
Nope. Mr. President, fine.
You know what? Let's keep it classy. Keep it simple for Bill. Mr. President, good to see you. Please, I just dropped a pen. I swear, everything is fine there. That is fantastic.
That's funny. Yeah.
All right, a few things to get you out of here. I gotta know then, and this is a side note. I know you're saying you're getting towards retirement and starting to slow down. Are you going to get back in the movie industry? I mean, I still remember your cameos back from the Adam Sandler. Did you have a connection with Adam Sandler?
We met. We met. I don't know how The Longest Yard came about. Like originally, I don't know if I met him first or I got a phone call out of left field, but again, I made it. I had been in big role, always playing myself. I mean, this is not any role actor. I'm not Dustin Hoffman or Tom Hanks or I mean, this is not. I played Chris Berman. Well, that was one little vignette of one of his movies, Grown Ups 2. I was somebody else, but that was just a spoof, But The Longest Yard was kind of that was a fun day. That was just a lot of fun. With the convict Indian, next to me. And that gentleman passed away a couple of years ago. Really good.
Oh, he did? Oh.
But I mean, if asked, hasn't happened yet, so I don't want to say it. They're still filming Happy Gilmore 2. I
mean,
you never know.
You never know.
I'm giving you a hint, but you never know. All right.
You never know. I just was curious. There has just been signs there. You've done a great job playing yourself and maybe some other roles. Who knows? That it was good, but also that The Longest Yard, the scene there, the moment, maybe that's why people can say you can be an actor. It's because you were who you were in the movie than you are in real life. It was perfect. It's amazing. Now the thoughts are ringing there, Brad. I'm wondering. So you're telling me there's a chance is all I'm hearing there.
They're still filming it. We'll see.
I thought this little fun thing, with all the success going back then, first car you ever had.
First
car.
Really good car. Wasn't new. I mean, nobody got a new car when they were, I didn't get it at 16. I think at 17, senior in high school, 1966 Mustang. Those Mustangs, there's something still about a Mustang. It's my first car. It was a silver, not bright, kind of a muted silver with kind of a black roof. And although now it was 4 on the floor, not a shift, but it wasn't up here. It was, between the two seats. It was 1966. They didn't really make cars that many like that. That's sports car-ish. Again, I was 17, and that car ran for a long time. That was I really enjoyed that one. What was your first car?
Gosh, well, in that case, first off, your eyes lit up, by the way, when you were explaining the Mustang. Just so you know, your eyes were wide and the expressions, I can see that had some good memories in that car. Mine was I got a 2005 Chevy Suburban that I drove into the ground and specifically drove it till it caught on fire coming up from spring training.
I don't mean to laugh.
Oh, well, no, hey, you know what? That was a part of it. And actually, so I got it when I was 16, and I said, my parents said, hey, enjoy this because the next one is going to be fully on you. And I said, okay. Well, I'm going to drive this thing till it can't drive no more. And in 2016, I was coming back from spring training. It was about at 215,000 miles. And all of a sudden on 95, I got two of my teammates in the back. We're going to Hagerstown to play for, at the time, was the low A class for the Nationals. And all of a sudden, I got this ABS light that starts flashing. I'm like, well, I'll be okay. We're still 2.5 hours away. No problem. And all of a sudden, the steering wheel starts to shake. And then it goes sideways. And then for me to keep the car straight, Chris, the steering wheel was the other way for the car to go straight. And I go, guys, I think there's a problem. I'm going to pull off the road. So we pull off, check it. It's okay. Get back on the road. Or so I think. Same thing happens. Get off completely. I go, guys, I think we need to figure something out. And they go, yep, I think it's a good time, Rip. I go, why do you say now? He goes, well, your tire's on fire. Ooh. I go, that's great. So all we see is smoke coming from the front right tire. Pull over. This was not my best decision, but pulled over near a gas station, ran in, got a fire extinguisher and extinguished it, got the car towed, drove it one more time. And then for next spring training, my parents said, that's it. So that was my car experience, but it was a great car. Drove it into the ground. Not as flashy as the Mustang, but it did its job. And
well,
that was one of them.
The reason my eyes lit up, the first car I ever bought was probably about 4,000 in 1979, was a whatever the 1979 rendition was of a Mustang. I had to do it. It was a different car. It's like a hatchback. It was a different thing, but it was a silver Mustang. I had saved enough for 3,800, whatever it was. It's huge by what you're making in 1979. But saved enough, and that was the first car that I ever bought new. And so Mustang twice lit up my eyes.
Mustang twice. Now I gotta see the picture of both these things now, Chris. If you have a photo, I'm gonna have to see one here at one point. Visualization of what it used to be like. All right, you've been covered. You mentioned then Barry Sanders. Barry Sanders was probably that guy you said he was different. Maybe he was bionic or however you want to describe, not human with how he moved. Any player in today's day and age that you feel similar to what Barry caused that type of sensation?
Well, as far as the physical, I have to think. This is not the right answer, so I'm going to look for another one here. But I'm gravitating to not even near this. But hear me out on this. To Patrick Mahomes wins, I get it. But I've called him starting late last year and this year, and he likes it. He runs like 3 times a game, but I call him the electric eel. Now I'm not trying to compare what he does to Barry Sanders, but I'm kind of going out, but I asked him, he goes, I'm not that fast in the 40, but give me about but at a 10 or 15 yard burst, they don't time that. I'm better. And he kind of never gets hit when he goes along the sidelines, and then he sticks the ball out to get around the first down pylon, so it's a first down. That's a quick answer. It's not the one you're looking for.
Electric eel. Well, no, it's your answer, right? But and by the way, I think we're seeing a day and age of quarterbacks in general that are just
right
escaping at different levels. Patrick Mahomes, I mean, in Baltimore here, Lamar Jackson, Houdini. It seems like every other week, except
unbelievable. I mean, that's the one to go to. But Mahomes is a different one because it's just those 3 times a game. And by the way, in the Super Bowl, you saw him when they needed it. He ran for stuff. Now, As far as, well, let's go to another guy in Baltimore, which is completely different because we love him because he's old school. Derrick Henry starts up. Booger McFarland, Tommy Jackson 2.0, who does ESPN Primetime with me on ESPN Plus. The beauty of that show is you can watch it to Wednesday night whenever you want if you get ESPN Plus. I get no more money, by the way, if somebody signs up off of this podcast on ESPN Plus.
So just so we know, you should watch the show, but just as a disclosure, Chris does not get that payment. Just like you guys know.
Correct. So I to the highlights last night when we did them, there was a couple. One, he's far back in the backfield, and there's a good hole probably off of Ronnie Stanley on the left, but it could have been anybody. So he's already full speed for 6 yards before anybody even thinks about hitting him. And when he gets to, if he gets to like the 5 or the 3, and it's not nobody ever has standing in the end zone, and they have an angle, it's what Booger and I call, he's a locomotive. It's a business decision. At the 2-yard line, I might give him a bump. Maybe the ball will fall out. I'm a competitor, but I'm not really. Then there was a screen pass that they threw to him yesterday in the game. Yeah. So he's already moving with 3 guys blocking an open field, and he's the locomotive. So in Lamar and Derrick and Henry, you have 2 jarring for different reasons. Maybe they are the 2 most jarring. Derrick Henry takes me back to when we were kids and you watched Jim Brown, and this is what running backs were. Lamar Jackson is off the chart. So he has the most whoops since Barry. Okay. So maybe the answer I should have said right away was Lamar. That's the obvious. By the way, an aside, since this is a lot of Baltimore audience, maybe, if you took a space capsule and left the Earth a year ago at this time, okay, and return now, so I'm talking 1 year.
1 year.
1 year. You come back and you're told, well, the Baltimore Ravens, they're going to win it with offense. What? Excuse me. I didn't hear that correctly. I mean,
no one would believe you, Chris, either. I actually just had this conversation yesterday. I go, when in our lifetime when we said, man, I'm not concerned about the offense scoring points, but I get a little nervous about the defense. And growing up, it was the complete opposite.
Well, more than even growing up. Last year, I mean, even with Lamar, etc. So
defense was locked down last
year.
They're
going to score 500 points. The Ravens, they usually give up 210 or whatever the number is. Right. And by the way, you take the same capsule, the Chiefs are going to win their last year's Super Bowl and keep winning this year, but they haven't lost since Christmas as we speak. Maybe they lose tonight. I don't think so, but you never know. You never know.
Right. You never know.
The Chiefs are going to do it with defense. What? Maybe I didn't really hear that. The Ravens are going to do it with offense. Very interesting how those 2 teams are now excelling the other way. Very interesting.
It is. It's exactly how we didn't write it up. I think Patrick Mahomes, you talked about, I like that electric eel, by the way.
He likes
it. I can see that. Well, because all the time it can drive I can't pull my hair out. I can't afford it, Chris. But when I look at him and I go, I don't know how you do it constantly. It's incredible. Even if he's not having the best game statistically, when you need it and he needs to make a play scrambling, he just does. And then for the Ravens, Lamar Jackson, it's crazy to think that he might be entering in his prime. And Derrick Henry is probably the scariest human being on a professional field regardless, because a man that size, Chris, should not be able to run as fast as he can. I'm glad he's a Raven. I'll be honest. He tormented Baltimore fans, Chris, for far too long in Tennessee. Now it feels better. Now, hopefully,
when he was signed, Ryan, with the Ravens, I texted Coach Harbaugh and I said, I don't know how much juice, meaning not for this year, but how much he's got left. But whatever he has, he's going to give it to you. And, well, a more modern name, although it's not modern, Jim Brown's a long time ago, but he's still the greatest. Earl Derrick Henry's Earl Campbell. He's Earl Campbell. And nobody got in that way either. Nobody.
And that's a great way to describe it. And I love using the past parts of it. Jim Brown, legend, icon with it. And that's the part of, and the games have changed, but it's still cool to hear where it comes back to. The talent of it is the thing that stays. The stories, Chris, are what stays. Kept you long enough, but the last parting words, and maybe for me, for broadcasting, but maybe just for anyone else out there, what is a piece of advice that you would give, you know, as you're continuing to try to take a chance, take a leap of faith, and go and try to chase after a passion, whether it be the next broadcaster or just whatever you want to try to accomplish in life?
Well, and I like speaking to younger folk because it was me once listening. For any job, I'll give you two things.
Okay.
For any job, it was one of the senior at Brown, where I went to college, Providence, Rhode Island, and the longtime sportscaster in Providence, you know, this isn't any huge name, was Chris Clark. He's passed long ago. He gave me this advice. He goes, Chris, you know, when you go after a job, you want to do this. I was a student broadcaster, obviously, at school, and you're going after it, and you're doing internships already, and blah, blah, blah. When you go to an interview, and that could be at any job, don't be afraid to be a little bit pushy, but don't be a pain in the ass. And only you can draw that line. I heard this when I was 21. I'm 69. I give that out all the time. That's any job.
Right.
The other is the more your passion part. Look, life sometimes doesn't deal us exactly what we want, what we deserve, what we need, which is too bad.
Yeah.
But if you don't go after, I mean, playing sports is obviously different. You got to do it in your 20s or you're not. So let's if you don't in your 20s, let's say, or even young 30s, if you don't give it, or even I'm going to play baseball, or like my son-in-law, hockey, go as long as you can, because even if you don't get to the big show, and he didn't either, he was, you know, AHL and Coast League, and Chip was a good player, but not big enough, you know, whatever.
Right.
He was good enough, but he's not the measurables. So that's even in sports. But if you don't pursue your passion, and again, you may be 32, 34, married, I've got a 1-year-old. You know what? I've given it 10, 11 years to see where it goes financially, our life, where we're living. Now it's reality. I got to do this. But you'll be able to live with yourself the rest of your life, knowing I gave it the best shot that I could. And often it will work out, not necessarily when you want it. We all want it yesterday.
Right.
Not necessarily when you deserve it even. God, I'm good enough. Why at 28 am I not? But I'm not going to give up yet. It can't hurt you in your real life, family, whatever you know, wherever you're headed in real life, if I will.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't give it your best shot in your 20s and 30s, you won't be able to live with yourself as much. If you gave it your best shot, but it didn't work, you're good because you were true to yourself. So hopefully that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. I think that the thing now, two things that just off of that last segment, because the first part I thought was fantastic, but with this, to close it out, I always looked at it. I played a sport where you had to fail all the time. To be one of the best players, you had to fail all the time. And then for me, you still didn't get to where you wanted to go. But the one thing, the hardest thing to deal with is regret, dealing with something that you didn't do it, not because you couldn't, but that you chose not to do something that you were passionate about chasing. So I appreciate you saying that, because most cases that I see, if you can see something through, and you might have some bad days, bad weeks, maybe even some rough years, but if you continue to put your best foot forward, I think that there's going to be a light at the end of the tunnel. And if not, you can go to bed at night going, I gave everything I had. So it made perfect sense to me. So I appreciate that. And you gave me so much knowledge. You gave me so many experiences and stories. And maybe you got my hopes up for one more appearance in a movie. And I'm praying that I see it. But Chris, thank you very much. I appreciate it for taking time today.
Ryan, it's a pleasure. I've heard that your podcast was popular, and now I can see why. Keep doing what you're doing. The beauty about broadcasting is we never hit 1,000, but we hope to hit above 300, right? So
for sure.
So you picked the right profession moving forward. Way to go.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate it.